Hello. Hi, Rohit.
Hello, Bhavik.
Um, let's wait for some time. Maybe we can give it a start. I don't uh, see anyone else joining in, but we can start from our side. Yeah. If anyone else is going to join in, we'll see accordingly. Okay. Uh, Let me just increase this and let me just rerun this with a smaller value. Give me a minute. Yeah. So, until the last session, what we have seen is basically we loaded the data, we looked into some information and descriptive statistics. We started looking into some analysis. We started doing three-dimension plots. I will not call this. This is actually a set of 2D plots only. Yeah, I see Sarangs is joining in as well. Good. So yes, we looked into a set of the pair plots, which are basically the two-dimensional plots. And then we have seen some problems with the distribution, which is over here, because the distribution which is shown on the pair plots is actually a combination of the distribution that we see over here. So it's not really an exact probability distribution function. So it may or may not concur with the data that we have. Because it's kind of a comparison. So each and every distribution which you see, let's say the one relevant to sepal length is basis the sepal length and the sepal width and the petal length and the petal width. So in that way, things change, and that's why we must always don't always look into the graphs. We have to support them and verify them with the numbers. Then we have to look at the scatter plots independently at least once. There is a spelling mistake here. Let me just correct it. So it should not be at least. It should be at least once. Yeah. And in the scatter plots only, we come to know about a lot of association between the variables, where we clearly saw, it's a petal length being one of the examples where the blue color, which is represented for the Setosa species of the iris flower, the example that we have started taking on, which is nothing but a toy uh, data set, is where we say there is a clear demarcation of this species, but when it comes to the rest of the two species, versicolor and virginica, they have quite some kind of overlap. Right? So let's now go ahead and look into 1D plotting. Now, in 1D plotting, just to quickly recap, we use the same formula, right? We use the facet grid formula or the function that we've used earlier, in which what we do, we pass the data set and then we specify if we would like to use an hue, and then we would like to use some height. Okay. Uh, basis which we do a map, and then we say I would like to have a distribution plot. Now I would like to see the actual probability distribution or probability density function. This is what this dist plot is going to give me. Basis the petal length with a hue of species. So I would like to see a distribution of petal length basis the species, or the bifurcated by means of the species of the flowers. So there are three species which we have seen. And then we have given this add legend kind of thing where it is adding the legends over here so that I can understand what they are. Right? When I do a plt.show, it shows me the distribution. So let's start from here, and then we are going to go ahead. Okay. Now, this line that you see over here, clearly this line is the PDF. Okay. This is how you plot the probability density function. And let me change the color. The box that you see inside the line, so this box, this kind of building like structure, right? These are nothing but the histograms. Okay, these are the histograms, and clearly we have already spoken about this when we are looking into theory, right? So a probability distribution function, let's say this one, is just a clean kind of smoothened graph, which is simply touching the heads approximately of the histogram. So this is the histogram of this flower. It's represented in the green one, so it should be virginica, right? So this is the histogram of the virginica flower, and then I have this. On top of that, I have the PDF of that flower, right? So that's how PDF is. Now, how is PDF helpful in this case? Okay, very easily. And the first thing that you do when you look into PDF is something like this. There are a lot of other things that we can do. Okay, this is just an example that I'm taking, or something that I would like to do if I look at PDF. The first thing I look is kind of the structure of the PDF. I am always interested to look at the structure of the PDF. So if I look at the structure, it's quite clear that, let's say I would like to create 3 diagrams and I would like to see what is the PDF. If I create 3 separate diagrams and look at the disk plot, I can clearly see that the one representing the petal length bases the flower setosa. So for setosa flower, the petal length, the distribution of the petal length is something like this. Okay, it's not an exact drawing, but it's something like this. This is a right skewed thing, right? But if you look at the rest of the two, they are almost centered. So one is this one. So this one is this. This is what? This is the versicolor one. So this is the versicolor one. The versicolor one is almost at the center. It's not really at the center. Okay. And then we have another one which is kind of left skewed. It's a little bit on the right side, inclined on the right side. That's why it is right skewed. This one belongs to Virginica. This one belongs to Setosa. Okay. Now this is probability density function. This is not the actual distribution. Why is still this not the actual distribution is because we have not looked into the individual distribution of the petal length. So what I mean by that is, let me clear the drawings. Let me go back to the next cell and I'm going to say, let's look at the overall distribution of the petal length feature. To do this clearly, I'm going to say dist plot and I'm going to enter here iris. I hope the command is right, but if it is not, I'll cross check. So let's do a plt dot show and see how it goes. Okay, so this is the distribution of the variable itself. Okay, this is the distribution of the variable itself. And if I look at the distribution of the variable itself, left hand side, I have the probabilities or the density of the probability. And then I have this boxed blue structure, which is actually the histogram. And then I have the smoothened structure, which is my PDF. So if I look at the individual variable, this is how the PDF is going to look like, right? It makes sense because in here, I've actually bifurcated it basis the species. And the reason why this one makes sense as well as this one makes sense is because both of them have different use cases. It depends on what question you're trying to answer is what kind of visualization you are going to use so as to find out what is going on with the data, right? Example given. In this case, this is a very simple case. Let's start with the simple one. Okay, let me change the color. This one, in this case, this being the PDF and this one being the histogram, I can clearly see this is a multimodal data. I can see there are a lot of modes, but I can, from the histogram, I can say there are a lot of modes, but from the probability density function, this graph, I can clearly see it is bimodal. So this is one mode, this is one mode. Okay, there is a highest range or there is a good amount of flowers with a petal length of 5 or approximately 5. I'm not entirely sure what is the exact value right now. We'll find out. And there is another type of flower with petal length approximately, let's say this will be what, 1.8 or 1.7 something. So 1.8 is one mode, 5 is one mode. But if you look at the description that we have seen earlier, maybe we can take that once more over here. So I can say iris petal length and I can say describe. If I do the description, then you can see 50% lies somewhere in 4.35. Right, so it is like 4.35. This value was 4.35. Okay, it is actually representing this 50% value is going to represent the highest mode or the mode which is having the longitude or the density the most. Right, even if it is a bimodal kind of a distribution or a multimodal kind of a distribution, this describe output is not going to show you the mode for each and every hike which is there in the data. Right, so this number here, this represent this. This number here does not represent this. Why? Because the height of this is actually more than the height of this. Now, by the height, what do I mean? It is the probability. So, or the density. right? So that is why it is called the PDF. So the density of this value is far more than any other value. That's why it's going to consider this as the value. As if you look at this data, you will come to know this is like a unimodal kind of distribution. That's not, right? So the point I wanted to make, I've said this, that only looking at the visualization, you shouldn't take a call. You should also look at the number, but then the opposite is also true. Only by looking at the number, you cannot take a call. You also have to look at the distribution. A mixture of these two is going to give you the full picture, right? The second thing is, this is one type of graph. We have another type of graph, which is this one. In this one, what is happening is, let's again draw something, and we will take some other color. This, no, it's fine. We'll take red. I can clearly see, basis the petal length, the distribution has a clear demarcation between the range of 0.8 until the range of 2.2. If the value of petal length is within this range, I can clearly say that the flower is a setosa flower. You can consider this as if you are a programmer and you are writing a big Python code and you have a lot of if-else statements. You have a lot of if-else nested blocks and so on. If-else is something we have seen, right? So these are conditional statements. Had it been the case, we are writing this program, this model, this output in form of a program, in form of an if-else statement, what will you write? If PL, or let's say the short form of the petal length is, let's say, PL. If PL is greater than or equal to, I don't know, maybe approximately 0.8, and it is less than or equal to, let's say, approximately 2.2, then I have this output. Okay, so the species of the flower is going to be this, right? So the thing that I say over here, or I infer over here, is that the use case, or the purpose of this diagram is actually different from the other diagram. In the other diagram, I was looking at the overall distribution of the petal length. In this case, I'm not. So basis the question, if I'm trying to ask myself, is there any way to bifurcate species based on their features? Or is there any way to identify species based on the features that I have? I have 4 features. I have to draw 3 more diagrams as well. I can't comment on this looking at one diagram. Oh, by the way, I can do only one chart and I can end the discussion. That's not going to happen. I'm really sorry to tell you, you have to analyze each and every variable. Each and every variable. Right? And in this case, I can clearly say that if my question was to figure out that I would like to know what is the demarcation factor, or how do I use, or can I really use petal length to identify the species of the iris flower, then yes, I can at least identify setosa. But can I identify versicolor and virginica? The answer is yes. The answer is no. Let's try to understand why do we have a conflicting answer. Why do we have a conflicting answer is because of this reason. It is as simple as you have two intersecting sets. If you remember set theory from your maths class, this is set A and this is set B. So there is some intersection, right? A intersection B is this. So versicolor intersection virginica is this. This intersection ranges from, let's say, 4 until 5.5, right? So how do we solve the problem? How do we comment on this graph? How do we comment on this part of the graph? Only concentrate on this part of the graph now. How do I concentrate on this part of the graph and answer the question, can I really classify, or can I really comment about the species which is versicolor, which is virginica, basis the petal length? The answer is to some extent yes. We don't know what that extent is. We will find out when we are going to do inferential statistics to some extent. But majorly, we are going to find out when we are going to do machine learning, right? But we can clearly see there is an intersection. If I ignore this intersection, everything else, this part is clearly versicolor. This part is clearly virginica. So again, if I'm going to write a program and if I'm going to write that if-else statement kind of thing, what am I going to do? I'm going to clearly say somewhere over here, right? 4, and this is what 2.2. 2.2 to 4. I am 100% sure that it's going to be a versicolor, but that does not cover all the cases. Then there will be these cases which will be wrongly classified, which will be wrongly identified, which will be wrongly grouped. What happens if the flower, which let's say comes over here, let's say there is a point which is here, okay? Let's say I'll take a black color. Huh? There is a point which is over here, or a specimen which is over here, but my if else statement is limited only to this much part, then this will be misclassified, right? Then this is what true negative case, right? If you remember that a table which we draw where we had listed down true positive, true negative, false positive, and false negative. In this case, this is going to be true negative case. It is actually true that it is part of the versicolor case. Maybe it is really part of the versicolor case, but I have not done that because my if else statement is very rigid. It is saying anything in this region is what I'm going to consider. In that case, what will happen? If you write such kind of a logic, you will only get this much part, the one that I have just hashed out. You will get area under this part of the curve. That's why that is one of the uses of probability density function. You look at the area which is beneath the curve, and then you can come to a kind of a conclusion, which is what. Now, in this case, let's try to understand how I can solve this problem. If you are asking me how to solve this problem, I will draw a line over here. Or maybe I would draw a line somewhere over here. This is just an approximation. Just an approximation. When we do machine learning, when we do statistical inference, that's where also we will only be able to do an approximation. You can never be 100% sure, right? If you are 100% sure, then you have a different problem, and we will mathematically quantify that problem as overfitting. But this is not the right time to quantify it. We won't be defining it right now. We will be defining it. But overall, I can say that I can take a range of this until this. Okay, maybe the diagram is not good. Let me just draw it once more. So this, let's say this. Okay, so anything in this range, something like 2.2 until 4.9. I'll simply say this has the maximum chance of being a versicolor. Why? In this range, do I not have the intersection part, or the part of the Virginica color which is also coming over here? Yes, but look at the area under the curve. A simple visual analysis will tell you the area under the curve that is applicable for versicolor is far more as compared to the area under the curve which is applicable for Virginica. This is why this range is quite clear for me. This is like 90% confident I am. I don't know what is going to be my confidence level in this case. We will calculate that. But this is how I can be to some extent, or to a very good extent, sure that if I take a range of something like this and I write again my if else statements, then I will get a flower which is majorly a versicolor species flower. In some cases, I am going to misclassify them, and they will be called false positives. This area, whomsoever falls over this area, will be called false positives. Why? Because they're falsely identified as the positives. Positives in my case, in this question, in this if else block, is the versicolor. Anything which is versicolor is a positive case, but these are not. These are actually the Virginica cases. Hence, this should not be. So this is false. Hence, these are false positive cases, right? But it's fine if it is not really more. The same applies on the other side as well. You see this, I drew a diagram here, right? Now I'm going to draw a diagram which is something like this. Can I say anything between the range of 4.8 to, let's say, 7.6 is going to be part of the Virginica color? Yes, but not 100% sure. Why? Because the area under the curve under this green line is far more than the area under the curve in this area, within this area, under this line, under this orange line. And that's why I can safely ignore this part. Maybe this is hardly, I don't know, 4 to 6% maybe. Approximately this will be like 4 to 6%. I can safely ignore it. And then if I ignore 6% or 7% of my data, I can say I am like, 93% confident that this flower, any flower that falls within this range, I'll again write an if else statement. Any flower falling within this range is going to be part of the Virginica. So as you can see in this exercise, I've created if else statement 1, if else statement 2, and statement 3. So this is my statement 1, this is my statement 2, this is my statement 3, or block 1, block 2, block 3, in which case I can simply write an if else kind of a statement, and I can end that if else block. If you try to visualize it in the front of you, let's say you're writing the code, you can clearly find this out using an if else statement. Now, why am I stressing on this point? There are two reasons. Reason number one, this has to do with your portfolio. I will come to what your portfolio means at a later stage in great depth. But as of now, please remember, if you are doing some data analysis and you are able to quantify, see, I have not used any probability, any statistics, any formula, anything. I have not used any number to define it. Only by looking at the visualization, I'm trying to write some arbitrary if else code, and I'm trying to figure out what is happening over here. If it is that simple, then it is a toy data set. It is a toy data. It is not a real life kind of a data. This can't be a real life data, or the data may be a real life data, but specifically the sample or the set of data that is given to you is for testing purposes only. You're not supposed to do any real time analysis using that. Why? Because you can't. You can't. If your data is so good that it is so easy to find out things without using statistics, without using probability, then there is something wrong. This is like the skeptical nature of a statistician. This is where the skeptical nature of a statistician will come into play. But then the nature of a data scientist is not to be always skeptical. It's good to be skeptical, not to be skeptical always. If we are able to formulate something using if-else statements, why not comment about it and let people think about it? Right? So what I'm going to do, let's say as a data scientist, what my mind will tell me is that I'm going to write this as a comment. Whenever I'm going to present this to a customer or whomsoever has asked me to do this analysis, I'm going to write this in part of my, let's say PPT. I'm creating a PPT and I'm going to put all these diagrams by taking screenshots and whatsoever. I can even export this this Jupyter notebook as a PDF and share it across. In both the cases, I'm going to explicitly write, sir, I clearly see there is a demarcation here. Basis the petal length, I can clearly define the species, and this should be the kind of thing. But it's not 100% confident. 100% it applies on the Setosa flower because there is a clear kind of a demarcation. For the rest of the two, versicolor and virginica, there is an overlap. And I understand I can't be 100% sure, but that's fine. 90+% I can be sure. I can be really 90% plus confident that there is a demarcation between the virginica and the versicolor, which falls in the range of 2.2 to 4.8, in which versicolor falls, and then 4.8 to 7.5 or something, where a virginica is going to fall. Right? So, being a data scientist, you can make generalizations or approximations, but being a statistician, you're not supposed to do that. Be very careful. Data science is a combination of statistics and programming. You must be skeptical. You must answer. You must ask yourself a lot of questions. You must try to question your own analysis. Otherwise, it won't work. If you're going to come to a conclusion only by writing 14 lines of code, then there is something wrong. Right? We have executed 14 to 15 cells of code. And if we end here, then there is something wrong over here. We're trying to do some kind of assumptions, and that is not the case. Making assumptions is the property of a null hypothesis. We are here to prove the alternate hypothesis, right? That's what we have learned. If I have a null hypothesis and I have an alternate hypothesis, I have to prove the alternate hypothesis so that I can reject the null hypothesis. Okay. Coming back to the hypothesis itself, you can formulate your business questions as hypothesis, and then you can try to do visualizations as well. That is not a mandate, but that's a good practice. So rather than we writing questions, we can write hypothesis, right? And we can write questions in form of hypothesis. What is a null one? What is an alternate one? And then we can try to do visualizations and try to figure out if it is really that case or not. Okay. Regarding the portfolio, I will come back later. Okay. You don't have to worry right now, but the reason why I wanted to tell you is this: your life will not be so easy that you can write a data analysis problem statement into if else kind of a statement. That's not going to happen. If that is happening, somebody has deliberately prepared the data for you or has taken a sample that matches with some very basic assumptions, right? So that data is very symptomatic. I mean, it is already having the assumptions that somebody has imbibed in it. Okay, please remember this. Similarly, I will do copy paste. I'm really good at doing this. So I'll do copy paste. I'll come over here, petal length, and I'm going to see petal width. Here also, I see a very good kind of a demarcation, but now the demarcation between versicolor and virginica is doubtful, my friend. Now this is doubtful. You know why? Because you look at this height over here. This height was good. This was like a very good length, a comparable length. But if you look at this length, now I'm scared. Now I am really skeptical. The height of this part, the orange histogram, is almost the same as that of the green histogram, area under the curve is going to cause a problem for me. That's why I need to use some kind of analysis technique, which we are going to see when we do machine learning, which is going to make extensive use of calculus. This concept of area under the curve comes from the calculus side of things. We will look into calculus. Some basics of calculus is really required. So we'll brush up those skills as well. But in this case also, I see using the petal width, setosa is clearly demarkable, which is fine, which is a very good thing. I've already seen that earlier as well. But here, I am not really in a position to write an if-else statement to find out what is vertical, what is virginica, or what is the differentiation between them. Like now, let's look into the other two variables. Look at sepal length. Now, sepal length is even a very difficult kind of a question here. This is like, I mean, versicolor and virginica with respect to sepal length are almost overlapping with each other. Right, it is almost overlapping with each other. It will be very difficult job to bifurcate the species of flower using the sepal length. You can clearly see this. Right, you can clearly say this, right? But there is a point that we can say, if I want to bifurcate basis sepal length, what is going to be setosa, what is going to be virginica? Can I do that? The answer is yes, because the area under the curve in this section is very small. So I can clearly write a code which is something like this. So this range, anything falls within this range of this value of sepal length, this is going to be setosa. And anything which falls within this range, okay, this range, right, the green one, this is going to be virginica. Okay, that I can do. That is also an approximation. Area under the curve plays a very important role here, and there will be errors in the approximation as well, which we'll see later. Right, but that I can do, but I can't really generalize between the versicolor and the virginica. I can't really say basis the sepal length there is a clear demarcation of setosa flower. Right, so that's one finding. Why are we talking about these findings is because we must write down these findings. It is not enough to only look at the visualization. You must write it down, and we are going to write it down. Don't worry. The last one, let's quickly look at the last one. Sepal width. Oh, this is a dangerous graph. I mean, everybody is sitting on top of each other, right? Everybody is like jumped on each other, and this is like three factories, one after the other. So these are like three chemical factories where a lot of smoke is actually coming out. These are like things which we see when we are driving via the highway, and every curve is actually a superimposition on the other. Clearly, there is a very difficult demarcation between versicolor and virginica. Versicolor and this one is green, right? No, sorry. Yes. Versicolor and virginica is very closely related when it comes to sepal width. Sepal width really not a good candidate to do the bifurcation. Okay, we have found out something. Let's write them down. Please always write down your findings. Huh? First thing, petal length and petal width are brilliant candidates to demark if any iris flower is setosa or not. But we cannot say the same thing about virginica and or versicolor if we consider only petal length or petal width. Benefit of doubt, we have less area under curve or intersection. Hence, it may still get used. Right? So what I mean by that is, let me just do this like this. So I'll take this and say this is like this, and right, I can still say that using petal length and the petal width, I will be able to bifurcate virginica and versicolor in one of the cases. Okay, in the next case, I'm not really 100% sure, but yes, for taking a risk, we can do that. It's not a really calculated risk, so I'll not go by that. But let's say overall, it's fine. I mean, if we take petal length and petal width, it's really a good thing. When it comes to sepal length and sepal width, clearly sepal length and sepal width are not good candidates, okay, to demark or identify the species of iris flower. Okay, here I may want to write something like this. You don't know, but maybe a combination of PL, PW, SL, SW will help identify the species. Right, we don't know that. It is just a blunt kind of a comment that maybe we can combine these four values. I've just taken the smaller notation. Okay, so PL is like the petal and PW is like the petal width. So basis this, we may want to say maybe a combination, uh, maybe a combination of the features is going to be a good thing, right? Now, this is a place where I've got actually a comment from Sarangs as well, and he is right. That was the next topic I was going through, and that was the next topic I was about to go through. We have briefly looked into PDF. This is not all that you can do with PDF. These are just a few things that you can do with PDF. Okay, we don't have the luxury or a time to cover everything related to PDF. We can't do that. Then we'll lose the grasp of what else we need to do. Right, where we will be running out of time and so on. So we will look into things which are very basic later on. Whenever we see problems, we are going to evolve, right? That's all we are going to look into in this case. Okay. Now, what we can do as of now, this is a suggestion from Sarangs, and that is exactly what I was planning to do now. And then in the next class, we will be doing some kind of, let's say, multivariate analysis and so on. And we will look into the stats or the SciPy library, which we have imported as well, right? So we will look into that as well. So as of now, let's finish the session. Something very important, which is very closely related to the kind of questions that we are asking over here. This is called you can say this is known as the correlation, right? Or this is also known as covariance. Okay, let's try to understand what is covariance. Okay. The most easy way for me to explain this part to you, and mind it, these are those kind of things which we have not talked when we talked into the theory, right? I've already told you there are things which we have specifically skipped so that we can look at them later. This is one of them. We have not looked into what is covariance and what is correlation. We have only talked about correlation. We have not looked at the mathematical form, right? Now, what is the covariance? Covariance is actually a measure, okay, of how two random variables, okay, let's say if you consider this block over here, it is saying a large negative covariance. Why is there a negative covariance? We will come to know at a later stage. But as of now, just imagine that this is a 2D graph, right? So there are two axes, x axis, y axis. So I can consider these two variables as two random variables, similar to our features. Our features are also random variables. Sepal length, petal width, right? These are also random variables. So these two random variables, how are they varying with each other? Rather than looking at the variance of one variable, which we know how to look at, right? We know how to calculate the variance. Using the mean, we can calculate the variance. Now, what if I try to plot both of them and try to figure out what is the way in which they are getting varied with each other? That's why it is known as covariance, right? Variance is where you look at a single variable. Covariance tells you how two variables are going to vary together, and the formula is going to be something like this. The formula here is, it is a summation. The covariance of x and y. X is what? So let me just zoom this. X is what? Another random variable. So let's say the one which is on the x-axis. Y is what? The other one which is on the y-axis. So covariance between x and y is what? Summation. Okay. Summation of this is an epsilon kind of a function that we are doing. And here what we are trying to do, x minus mu and y minus v. Right? What is v? And what is this mu? Mu is the mean of x and v is the mean of y. So if I create simply a table, right? If I simply create a table where I'm going to take the values of x minus, I will do the mean. So I will take the mean of x, I will do a minus, or I will subtract the mean from each and every value of x. And then I take that absolute value. Similarly, I take the absolute value of each and every value of the random variable y and subtract the mean of the random variable y from each and every value. Then I take a multiplication. Okay, this part is the multiplication. Then I take a summation. I take a summation, then I divide it by n minus 1. Why did I divide it by n minus 1? Because this is a sample. Okay, this is where variance is where what? Variance we have already seen, right? In case of sample, what do? We do Bessel's correction. So that's why we have n minus 1. So x is here a random variable. E of x or minus mu is the expected. This will be minus. Huh? E of x minus mu, this part. Okay, E of x minus mu is the expected value, the mean of the random variable x. Mu is the expected value of the random variable x. And then we are simply subtracting mean from that value. Similar we are doing for the other variable. N is the number of items in the data set. Okay, there is an example. There is an example over here. You can take it from here. So what it is trying to do, let's try to see what is happening over here. If we don't have time, we are going to look into correlation at later stage. But covariance is from where correlation comes up. Okay, so without covariance, you cannot do correlation. We'll come to that. Okay. There is a notion of this n minus 1. N minus 1 is done for Bessel's correction, also known as degrees of freedom. Degrees of freedom is something which we have not looked into. We may have briefly looked into when we were doing the ANOVA, but I'm not sure. I think we have not looked into the degree of freedom thing. Now that we will look into at a later stage. Please don't worry about this line right now. Okay, but if I want to calculate the covariance between variables x and y, where x is a random variable of these numbers, y is a random variable of these numbers. First thing I do, I calculate the mean. Okay, I can do that using NumPy. I can take this as an array, I can take this as an array, and I can create the mean of these numbers. Okay, then what I do, I need to apply the formula. What I do, I am subtracting the mean from each and every value. You see 2.1 minus 3.1. Okay, then 8 minus 11. So what I'm doing, xi minus mu multiplied by yi minus v, where xi or x1, x2, x3, x4 are the 4 values of x, y1, y2, y3, y4 are the 4 values of y, mu is the mean of x, v is the mean of y. So I'm not going to do a summation of x's first and then I'm going to multiply. No, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the summation, a combination of each and every activity that I'm doing over here. So 2.1 minus 3.1 multiplied by 8 minus 11. This becomes my first factor or my first item. Then 2.5 minus 3.5, 3.1 multiplied by 10 minus 11. So that becomes this factor, right? Then this one, then this one. Then I divide it by 4 minus 1. Why 4 minus 1? You see, there is a problem here. 4 minus 1 is something that we need to do because we have to take the values of random variables x and y, where n of x, so the number of x I've taken, is equal to the number of y's. Otherwise, covariance cannot be calculated. Okay, this is one of the restrictions of the exercise. We cannot calculate the covariance. Right? In this case, it is 4. I divided by 3. Solve for each and every portion, and then you get the number. If this output, now what is the significance? The significance is if this output is any number greater than 0 and quite greater than 0, let's say it is 0.2, that is also greater than 0, right? I'm not going to consider that as a positive relation between x and y. Compared to 0, 2.26 is not really high, but quite high. Right? I can't say 0 is equal to 2.267, but I can approximate the 0 is equal to 0.01. Right? Because there is hardly any difference between 0 and the 0.01. Right? So if it is quite good in the distance from the number 0, and if it is quite high from the number 0, then I say the result is positive, meaning the variables are positively related, which means increase in one variable causes increase in another variable. In other words, increase in the variability of one variable causes increase in the variability of other variable. In the same way, you can imagine what is going to be large negative correlation or a large negative covariance. And near zero covariance is if this value would have come quite closer to zero. If this value would have come minus 4.78, it would have been a negative correlation. If this value would have been minus 0.003 or plus 0.02, then it is going to be near to zero kind of a covariance, right? Let's make it a stop here because we don't have time. We're going to continue tomorrow. We'll look into the rest of the things, right? Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.